Welcome back, folks. This week we're working on a 1972 C20 in Avalon green. Taking a little break from the 68 in bright white. A lot of painting to be done. Matter of fact, real quick, that's what I'm doing here. This is a 72 bumper. Again, original bumper, best of my knowledge. Got a couple little, looks like they hooked the chain on it or something one time. I'm going to leave it alone. You can't see it. I never noticed it. But I've got to paint the back side of this. It will bother me. It's probably never going to rust out, but I can scrub it down real quick. I got a little more to do. This side isn't rusting as bad as that side. I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. I want to get these lights covered, anti-rust stuff. You know what I mean? I'm going to just use a brush on two-part paint. I won't bore you with this. There's always painting to be done in the shop. Two things. If you're ever bored around me, you can come down to the shop, paint, clean. Those two things are always available if you want to do that. So I'm going to get this painted. And while we're focused on the Avalon green, and that's what I'm going to work on this week, let the paint dry on that tailgate. I got the trimming to do. We talked about that on the 68 box. I might show you a couple pieces of that here and there, but it's, it's paint. So I'm not excited, but let me show you. I'm going to be bouncing you around a few times to kind of show you everything. I have to cover a few issues here, but I'm not excited about taking this Corsa part out, not one bit. All original truck. Try to leave it alone, but it is severely rotted in the bottom. This part of the core support here isn't even attached to the frame. It looks like it is, but it's the weight of everything on it. You can actually move it right off the frame forward, backwards. The fender has been holding it for the last 2 years, which is why it bangs on the door. So the fender's not designed to hold that much weight. It is attached here. Anyway, I got to tear this out, so I'm starting on it today. Got to get this air conditioning going so I can put the baby back together. My girl, I don't like her all tore apart. But I wanted to show you some wiring because it's here. It's never been monkeyed with, and I'm about to monkey with it. I'm going to put it back just exactly the way I found it. But let me show you that. So what we're looking at here is the core support area behind the headlight on the passenger side, fender removed. This part here would be attached to your fender. This is that positive block that they use. Your alternator comes into it. This comes right off your battery right here. This is your main ground that goes to your fender, goes down to your ground wire right here. I don't know how well you can see all that, but it's pretty simple. I know it's confusing when you're on camera. There's a red wire that goes to your battery. It goes to this block on your fender wall, if you still have it. The ground, believe it or not, there's just the one wire that goes directly to the motor, I believe. Yep, up to the motor, the head. And then this also goes to that fender. So everything that gets grounded on the entire vehicle goes through this ground. I know it's hard to believe, but that's how they did it. That's your main and only ground. If this is not connected good to that fender, it's stripped out or something isn't perfect on that, you won't have anything. Yeah, it might pick up ground through a bolt somewhere else, but as far as it's designed, this is your battery to vehicle ground right here. Can't stress that enough. All right. This is your corner light. Just pop that out. It takes a quarter turn and you pull it out. That goes into the harness that plugs into the back of your headlight right here. And there's a ground wire that goes only to your headlight. And it's attached right here. It goes right to that plug. It does not enter the wiring harness. Zero, not at all. So don't worry too much about this ground unless your headlight doesn't work. Other than that, don't monkey with it. There's not much going on here, even though it looks like it. Let me take it to the other side. Okay, folks, what we got here, I'm holding the camera, so it's going to jiggle a little bit. I'll do my best. We're only going to be here a minute. This is the driver's side. Radiator over on this side over here. There's your radiator right over here. There's a horn, and this is sometimes referred to as a horn relay. This is the, what do they call that now? The other name, voltage regulator. There is down here, that thing right there is bolted to the front. That is a condenser. I don't know if I even use it. So this is original wiring. None of this has been moved. It hasn't been messed with, other than I have two horns down here. So I did do a splice so I could put in two twin horns. I like the sound better. The rest of this wire is the way it was original. This top wire comes across from the passenger side, battery side. It goes right across your bulkhead and dips down into here. Goes in your main harness. This main harness goes back inside the cab. What I want to show you here is there's a ground right here. Goes only to the headlight. It even has a, I don't know what you call this, a jumper for a second wire. It goes to the core support. It doesn't hook to anything except the headlight. It has two grounds. That does not go to the wiring harness. I want to make that clear. There's no grounding in this front area for the wiring harness. These wires down here that you can see, there's just a mess of them. I can't really move much to show you. There's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 that go into the voltage regulator. There's the horn. This is your front lights right down here that go through this hole. That's for your turn signal in the bumper. That comes out. And of course, the headlight harness. And then this little wire over here you can barely see just goes to the marker light. So no grounding to be concerned with down here other than if your headlight doesn't work. That's the only one to monkey with. All right, I'm going to pull you back slowly so you can kind of get a feel for where we're at, what I'm talking about. Right there in the truck. Now, some of you have noticed this container. That's my radiator overflow. I highly suggest you put one in, but that's not a normal factory part. Alternator. This is an internally regulated alternator. It is wired directly to the wiring the way it originally was. Nothing has been changed. Everybody tells you you need to do a jump wire down here, and that might be proper. But when you start changing things from original, I don't know how you can use the word proper. That regulator is being used. The internal regulator is being used. So it's dual regulated. I don't know. Could cause you a problem because you have two things to go bad. But it'll never overcharge because one of them will cut out. That's up to you, folks. Okay, back to the job at hand. What I'm attempting to do is get this core support out without removing the radiator and the fan. I cannot talk today. Radiator, fan shroud, and the fan. I don't really want to tear all that apart either. I don't want to tear none of this apart, but it's got to be done. So I'm going to take this wire loom that goes across the top of your core support. It's in a plastic wrap. I don't know whatever you call it. There's a bunch of little screws in there. Those all have to come out. And I'm hoping to drape that wiring harness away from the core support. I have to take my horns loose. I might be able to just unplug them. I have to take that regulator and everything off and just kind of hopefully set it back and get this core support out. So that's my challenge. I'm going to start at it. All you're going to see is my backside leaning over, taking bolts, cutting wires out. So not much fun. I'll bring you back. All right, I'm back. Yeah, you're back anyway. I've been steady at this. I don't show you guys me on the floor a lot because getting up isn't easy and my shoulders are shot. So I'm down there just grinding away and they're popping and I'm going out and all that. So you're not going to see that. I won't bring that up again. Just for my regular viewers so you know, I don't do well on the floor. But I want to say this wasn't that bad. Had the 3 bolts for the inner fender on the driver's side, came right out. I'll tell you what I use in case you guys ever wonder. If I'm going to soak something overnight, I use a spray called Deep Creep. It's a little thicker. It tends to cling to the threads, and overnight it soaks in better, in my opinion. If I'm just going to grab a wrench and go after something, then I'll use PB Blast. I don't care for the smell, but it seems to break that rust down better than anything else I found. So that's what I use. Today, I think I had soaked these before, but it doesn't matter. I hit them with some PB and I went after them and I ran them in and out 2-3 times. They came right out. The core support bolts surprisingly came right out. Again, original. It is a C20. So the rubber that they use is thicker. I think the body is raised off the frame probably a 1/4 inch. It's silly, but they are different. They have a lot. They're double nutted. I never noticed that before, but both of these were double nutted. They're in good shape. The rubber is still pliable. There's no cracks in it. So a garage kept vehicle, boy, it sure makes a difference. You park one of these in a fence row, all this stuff rots fast. So I was pretty fortunate that came apart. Both of these core support bolts weren't any trouble at all. Again, Work them back and forth, spray them down, taking your time. I had to weasel out the core support because part of it goes in behind here. I don't think you could pull it out without taking at least one fender off, but I happen to have one off, so that was fine. Wiring all came out pretty good, but as you see, this job never ends, just continues on. We've got some rust here that was sandwiched between our fender and our core support. That's just what you're going to end up with. So I can clean that all down, put a paint layer so we'll have something between them next time. Got a couple little holes on the inside of this fender. It's really solid. Somebody's coated the inside really well. May have been me. I can't remember. So I'm going to blow the dirt out, clean it up, kind of hit this with my flat hammer, get it straightened up. I'm not taking this fender off. That's a lot of work. And it doesn't need to come off. For these few little rust holes down here, I don't know. I'm either going to use a seam sealer because there's not much here, or maybe some Bondo. I don't like using filler down here because it's going to get wet. Bondo absorbs the moisture, so you really got to make sure it's coated well. I'll probably use some seam seal. I have a little left in the tube anyway, but I want to get it cleaned up, get the rust all knocked off, get this all hammered back flat, and I'll probably just seam seal it. It'll be fine. It will, promise. The only other thing I noticed is now we have some issues here. It looks like somebody's dealt with before. Couple little holes up here on the very inside corner. As long as I own a truck, I doubt it'll ever rot out. But being that it's just right here, I might as well work on this rust too. I'll spend a little time on it, not a lot. Core sport brackets, I bought a new one, but it's solid, so that was a waste of $6. But I'm gonna clean this all up, get the frame horns all painted, get the rubber grommets cleaned up, and then I'll get started on that core support. It's not terrible. I can clean it up and rebuild that end, good enough for me. And we'll get to the bench and we'll show you guys that in a minute. And then we can get after air conditioning again. All right. Okay, boys and girls, we've got the core support over here on the bench. Now, just mention this to you real quick. I left the headlights on it. I left the hood support bracket all on it. Of course, the other headlight. So you can't just sit on the bench. Another good time to get out some sawhorses where you can put this long part between them and just some things to think about. Keep your mind going on what am I going to do to hold this project tight. Well, as expected, I unexpectedly have more problems. Yeah, no, that doesn't seem to make sense. You know me in English. We always run across stuff that we don't expect. So I've come to expect that that's going to happen, even though I don't specifically know what. And what it is the, I'm getting confused all the time. Passenger side, no, driver. Sorry, the driver's side. It's got a little rust spot through here I'm not very happy with. I'm not too concerned with some little rusting on this folded metal that holds the inside of the fender well. It doesn't concern me too much. I'll clean it all up. I don't know. I'm not going to do any metal work on it. Doesn't do anything. I don't care. This, I'm going to figure out what to do with it. But I wanted to mention it just for a second because sometimes, we're in the core support. We're under the radiator. This is the frame rail under here. Absolutely can never see this. No, the reason I say that is an excuse to do a crappy job. But it means that you don't need to be concerned with the visual appeal of it so much. So when I redo this, I can cut this all out and try and find a piece of metal. Of course, that's got a flange welded in it to make it extra strong. I could spend a whole lot of time on this, making it look good that you can't see it even if you wanted to. Plus, it's going to rust out too. So I'm considering brazing this back up. Maybe I had to add a piece of metal in there, but hold a piece of metal in there with something and braze it. Now that's 3 hands, torch, the piece of metal, and the brazing rod. But brazing rod you don't have to heat everything quite as hot when you braze. And the brass you put in here is never going to rust, and it's going to hold it really well. Plus, you can braze thinner metal, if I'm being honest. So that's a consideration. And I do have to get that up. I want to get these out while I'm talking. These rubber isolators for the bottom of the radiator. If I leave those in there, I'm going to burn that darn thing. And I don't want to buy new ones if I don't have to. Although I'll suggest on a 55, 56, 58-year-old vehicle, depending on how old it is. You might consider replacing them anyway. But just again, a garage kept truck. They're not cracked, they're not split apart, they're in really good shape. There's some rust behind it, so even better I took them out. I can clean that all out real good and put some paint in there. So let's dig those out real quick. I'll get you in, don't worry. The biggest issue with this, I mean, you can see just me prying on that, this whole thing moves. The issue at hand, the reason I took it apart, I wouldn't have took it apart for that. I didn't really even know about it. Is this side rotted out pretty bad. Now, again, not trying to make excuses now, but a part that nobody's ever going to see, doesn't matter. It's my truck. I'm not going to spend, these are reasonable, by the way, considering all the metal involved. These are only in the $300 range, maybe $320 plus shipping, of course. That's not terribly unreasonable. If you put a big enough order together, you'll get your shipping free. So consider it for yourself. If I was doing a Pebble Beach restoration, I certainly would buy one. In this case, it's kind of a toss up, tell you the truth. But because I'm not trying to sell this truck, I'm going to keep it the rest of my life. Whoever gets it, inherits it from me, gets it for free, or whatever the deal is. If they don't like what I did, good. They get to work on their truck. That's the fun part. So quite a bit of work to do over here. A little bit of structural, maybe you call it. Let me get you and show you. So focusing under the battery tray area, this is on the passenger side. This is rotted almost to the front, to the face. Now, had it rotted up the face, I might have considered buying a new one a little more seriously. But I'm glad this piece is on there. It doesn't seem like a big deal to have that little tiny piece. I don't know how well you can see that, but bear with me. Imagine if you can't. This pocket, I don't even know why it's there. Honestly, don't have a clue. Maybe for strength or something. They like to put bends in things. But the bottom flange that runs across that way is in good shape. Of course, it's gone here, and then it picks back over here. Now, there's just holes in here. There's a hole right there. So I don't want to leave this garbage. It's got to go. But I'm going to chop it somewhere over here. I'd like to leave this bolt that obviously is rounded off. I'm going to have to pull it out, heat it with a torch. Yeah, too bad. I want to leave that just because it'll give me an idea where my inner fender is going to bolt back to. No, I guess it doesn't really matter. I could drill from my inner fender. The problem you have is if you didn't notice exactly where your inner fender was, you might drill it a little off. And if you know anything about these trucks, they're like a puzzle. Each piece is put together, and when they do, they make a whole piece, obviously. But if you have one piece off, it doesn't get better. It gets worse as you go on. Kind of like putting OSB on a roof, if you ever done that. One piece is a little off, but by the time you get all the way to the end of the building, you're off a long ways. So it's nice to keep an anchor point if you have enough metal. And this end is very strong, inner and outer. So I'll chop it off somewhere over here. Doesn't really matter. I just want to get away from this thin part. But then I'll continue this metal back across here. So I've got some work to do. This inner structure is also rotted out. I won't bore you with that. Probably this part is the most important part to look at right now. So they take this piece of metal down, single piece of metal bent, to this bottom metal, which is actually two pieces. And that is where your core support bolt goes through to the frame. Well, what they've done is they've welded in a triangle pocket similar to what I've got here, and I'll tell you about that. An angled piece, and they weld that in there to give it a third piece of metal and strength. It holds this corner good and strong, adds extra metal, and it keeps this corner here nice and strong. I like that this is all stamped. I can't stamp metal in my shop whatsoever. I can take an angle iron and weld a gusset in, and that's fine. Actually, now that I see this, almost looks like this. No, that's stamped. Now, I don't know anybody that sells this piece because they don't sell a lot of repair pieces for stuff like this because you can buy a new one. But I don't want to buy a new one, so I can either make this by folding a piece of metal or I can take a heavy bracket like this one. Now, I should tell you, this isn't designed to be in there. It was actually for frame mount underneath. But I bought it thinking that I might need it on something anyway. It's a good strong piece to use, maybe even on a piece of farm equipment. So I don't know what I'm going to use there. It doesn't matter particularly, but just remember there are 2 layers here. There's an extra piece welded in. So I'll deal with that. I'll bring it back maybe midway and we'll work through it. But down here, okay, over here, this is the driver's side. Again, the inside of that core support. And this is a voltage regulator that you may not even use. This is for me, that you may not even be using. So this whole thing might be irrelevant to you, but I have something to talk about that could be relevant at another time. So Scrum, I think is what he calls himself. I think he has a channel too, by the way. You might check him out. He messaged me about these. These it was on another item, doesn't matter. You can use these in a lot of places. He wanted to talk about these plug nuts, or he called them well nuts. I'm sure there's 16 names for these things because that's the English language. Anyhow, they're pretty neat little thing. They forgive me, I'm thinking about 10 things. They're rubber and they have a brass, I'm call it a nut for lack of better terms, inside of them. And you push these through a hole like these holes I have here. Whatever holes that size, and they make them in different sizes. I bought a small kit just so I have them. No, there's a couple uses for these, and they sell bigger kits. They're not terribly expensive. One of the uses for these is if you don't have a rib nut gun and you don't want to spend the money and buy one because you only have one project. And this isn't what you're going to do like Darren does all the time. But you push these through your hole. Hole has to be really close to the right size. So just if you're drilling your hole out or you need to put it in there, make sure it fits firmly. And once you get this in the hole, you're going to put your bolt. I should tell you, your metal is going to sit right in here. This rubber piece on top. Okay. And then you run your bolt through. And when you tighten this bolt up, the metal's right here. It's going to pull that nut from the bottom. It's going to pull it up tight and bulge this metal. I don't know if you can see it, but it's going to bulge this metal out. And it's going to bite onto that piece of metal that you're through. So if you ever need to fill a blind hole or an open hole, doesn't matter, without threads, these are an option. In this particular case, I don't use them very often because I have a Zert nut gun. But in this application, this voltage regulator is supposed to be rubber mounted. Now, I see it has an isolator, so I don't believe it needs rubber mounted for electrical purposes. I even double checked, and ChatGPT says it's not. So that's a 50-50. But it is important for this type of electronics mounted in this area. Well, it has rubber mounts down here, but they're just afraid it's going to just get too much high pitched vibration. I don't know how to explain it to you. Bump, bump, bump is one thing, but just that constant, bumping can destroy sensitive electronics, which we all know this is not sensitive electronics. But GM thought it was necessary to have it rubber mounted. But as you might see, and again, I'm getting you some small detail stuff here. This is the original GM, and as good a shape as it's been. It's split out. There was a nut in it. I don't know how well you can see in there. I see rusty. So I'm assuming it was steel, and that little nut's rusted off. It just isn't going to work proper. So I'm digging them out, and I'm going to put in new ones that have the brass nut and a stainless steel bolt or screw so that I can rubber mount this again and get it properly put back into my truck. I do use this currently. I could bypass it, but right now everything's working, so I'm not going to fix something that isn't broke. So that's going to get remounted. And I do believe this is supposed to be grounded, but I could be mistaken. No, it's just a clamp, just holds it. So that's not important. It was on top of this rubber mount, so I'll put it back there because I want it to be the way it was meant to be. So there's that little discussion. You might have a good use for those. They're pretty cheap. Again, a plug nut, well nut. All right, let's move over to the 72. I got something for you. Over here to the 1972 C20 in Avalon green. Now, I don't know how well you can see me because I'm not a good cameraman. But I want to do my end of video thing I talked to you guys about. I don't always do it, but I don't always remember, to be honest. But if I get viewer comments and stuff, I try to put them at the end of the video, so not everybody has to watch something that might not interest them, but it's still in the video, and I enjoy doing it. Now, I do private videos. If you ever have anything that's really important, I'll do a private video and just send it between the two of us. I've done that for a few guys. I try to keep it to a minimum, but if you have something important, feel free. Today, I want to talk about carburation, fuel injection. Back to the basics is what I call this. So, if you're deep into cars and you know about alternators and you know about carburetors, then click off right now because I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I know just enough to make everything work for me. So now that I disclaimer that I'm not a carburetor specialist, I want to talk about how these things work. There's a lot to it. I'm going to try and get through it quickly if I can do it. Let's go with fuel injection first. Get that out of the way, then we'll talk about our carburetor. On a fuel injection vehicle, if you're, I don't know, 45 or younger, maybe 50, you may have never owned a carbureted vehicle. And that's okay because they don't make them anymore. So there's no need to have this old knowledge. Yes, we're losing a lot of old knowledge in life. It seems sad, but if we're never going to use it, I guess it doesn't really matter. That's up to you. Pass on your knowledge if you can. In a fuel injection system, there's a number of sensors. There's all kinds of complicated things. I'm not getting into those, but I want to talk about generally how they work. You jump in your car, you put the key in, turn it, start it right up. Of course, these days you just push a button. But at any rate, you can start the vehicle and never touch a thing. You can reach through the window and start it. It's because the designers and your fuel injection system knows what's going on. It has ambient temperature sensors in it. It has air fuel sensors in it. It has engine sensors that tell what engine temperature is. It has a crank sensor to tell engine speed. It uses all these things mostly to adjust the fuel. That's what all that's really for. A carburetor is a dummy fuel supplier. It doesn't have any of that electronics. So you can't just turn the key and expect it to work the same. What a fuel injection will do is it realizes the car is cold and it's cold outside and it needs more fuel. Remember, the motor's cold. It's like a cold glass of water. It's going to get a little moisture. It's going to stick to it like a glass of water would. Or when your fuel goes in the motor and everything's cold, a carburetor doesn't atomize like a fuel injection. It sprays hard through a very small hole. Then it creates teeny tiny droplets of gasoline. And then they vaporize almost instantly in the motor. But when a cold motor is involved, the fuel injection system knows it's cold and it will squirt more fuel. It also knows that the motor's not running, so it'll squirt a little more fuel for that. So it's taking care of all the things for us, like a lot of electronic things do. They make our lives easier. But if you're going to have a carburetor, real quick, I'll walk you through what we need to do. Another thing fuel injection does for you is you don't need to be a friend to your vehicle. It knows how to drive itself. And as soon as you push the pedal, depending on how hard you push the throttle, it knows how much response you want due to the throttle communication, because it has that too. These old trucks, you need to get to know each other a little better. Your truck needs to be your buddy. You guys need to be like friends so you can get along real good. What I mean by that is this. Instead of the fuel being sprayed into your motor, it's being sucked into the motor by vacuum. And it sucks air past the jets in your carburetor, and that's where it picks up the fuel. There's no pressurized anything in this. Well, we'll get to the accelerator pump in the middle in a minute. It uses that suction and the airflow to get fuel in your motor. Well, if the motor's cold, it needs more fuel, and there's no way for the carburetor to do that. So part of what they did is they put in a choke. Now, if you're older than me, you probably had a hand choke. You actually had to pull the choke out. That was before my time, or at least I was just a lad at the time. Now they put in electric chokes, which this one has, and I don't know what that does. Just know that it has wires going to it and it works better. I don't know. But even if you don't have electric choke, that's fine. That choke turns this butterfly down, that's what they call it, the choke butterfly, and closes flat like your hand over a vacuum cleaner. So when you turn the key, now you got a lot of suction going through those little tiny jets, and the fuel will flow quicker into the engine than the air because the air is blocked off. That's where you get your extra gas to get it running. But you still haven't gave it that squirt of gas it needs. So they put an accelerator pump in these. And when you push the pedal fairly fast, yeah, I don't have an exact measurement, but I mean, not just roll on it, but actually give it a pump. That creates enough for what they call it, a pump. The fuel pump, now I forgot what it's called. Thank God, just roll with me. It's like a Windex bottle. If you squeeze the trigger slow, you might get a little Windex out, but it ain't going to do much. If you kind of give her a pump, then you get good atomized fuel. It sprays it in there. That's the same thing with the accelerator pump. When you give that gas kind of hard, it squirts. You can even hear it if you're outside here and you do it. It'll squirt it right in there. I want to try to do that. I don't know if you can hear that. And that gives you more shot of fuel you need to fire this thing up. But as you may notice here, and I'm going to get you in now that I'm almost done talking, when you park your warm vehicle with the carburetor, the choke stays open because you don't need a choke while it's warmed up and you're driving it. And the reason it doesn't close is because, well, there's some notches and stuff on there. I don't want to get into all that. But basically, mechanically, it's held open. And what you need to do, everybody with these, and then we'll talk about everybody needs to get to feel and get to know their buddy. But right now, they're the basics. You need to get in and hit the accelerator pump or the pedal, however you want to call it, the gas pedal, and that will release your choke. It's spring loaded in this choke adjuster over here. Now, we're not going to get into adjusting today, but once you give it one, I don't know, tap of the throttle, it'll allow that choke to close. And I'm going to show you that here in a second. This carburetor, by the way, is adjusted perfectly. And that ain't all on me. I got lucky because I've tried some vehicles you can get pretty good. Some take a little longer. And then once that choke goes down, you start the motor up. As the engine runs and gets a little heat into it, there's a bimetal spring inside this choke thing over here that you can't almost see. You'll get in there, I'll show it to you. And as that metal warms up, it'll either expand or contract. I'm not familiar with which way, it doesn't matter. And that will turn that shaft that butterfly is running on. And it'll open that choke back up to give you free flow as the vehicle gets warm. Clever idea. It's a little slower to warm up because it's away from the motor. So you'll have a high idle maybe longer than you like. So another little trick is once you hit the pedal one time, you fire the truck up, let it run for a minute, let the motor smooth out. You know, it runs a little funny when it's first started. As soon as it smooths out, I don't know, give it 20, 30 seconds if you got the time. The slower and easier you go on a cold motor, the better it is for everything. Even a modern day with fuel injection. You just don't think about it because it runs so good on its own. So if you're in a hurry to kind of get rolling, again, each carburetor is different. Some carburetors, you can let it idle for a half hour before it gets enough tension on that spring to pull that choke close. Because remember, I mentioned to you, there's mechanical things going on that hold that. So after it's run for 20 seconds and you still have a high idle, if you just bump the throttle a little bit, that'll release the tension on some of these springs and it'll let that choke close under the tension of the spring. So that's why it'll idle down quicker if you just give it a couple taps of the pedal. You should not, again, it isn't going to destroy your truck, but you shouldn't put it into gear with the idle over about 1200 RPMs, 1300. You'll notice that it jerks or lunges forward. That's not good for your transmission or your U-joints or anything else. Does it destroy them? No. Does it ruin your truck this week? No. But it's a good habit not to give it that hard clunk jamming into gear. All you gotta do, tap that throttle a few times. The tide will come down a little bit. 1100 or less is great. Drop it into gear and roll away. I like to let off the brake when I put it in gear because if I'm putting it in gear, I'm ready to roll. That takes that initial jerk out of it. With the brakes off, you drop it in the gear and it allows it to kind of roll forward. Let's move along. We got things to cover. I want to do that choke in front of you, so I'm going to get you in closer. I got you close enough to see what's going on. Again, this is your choke actuator. Again, mine's got wires, so it's electric choke. You may not have wires on yours. I can talk about how to adjust that before we're done, but that's not what I'm focused on. I'm focused on the general behavior. You can adjust this thing just infinitely because you loosen the bolts on it and it turns like a clock hand. You can just manipulate anywhere you want. Unfortunately, if you move this at all, and you lock it back down. That's it for the run, because now it's going to be warmed up. You can't make your next adjustment until the vehicle is sat overnight. So that can take a week or two to adjust. It only takes a few seconds at a time, maybe a minute. So we'll get to that another time. What I want to show you is the choke is locked open here. Now mine's slightly passed straight up and down. It should be perfectly straight up and down, but a little tilt isn't going to create a lot of vacuum, so I'm not concerned with it. And the fact that it works so perfectly, I'm not monkeying with it. But here's the butterfly choke. I want you to keep an eye on that. Now, I'm not going to climb in the vehicle to do it, but here's my throttle cable. So if I'm inside the vehicle and I push the throttle, I'm going to pull this cable backwards. So instead, I'm going to do it right here. This pump right here is going to move when I pull it. It's going to go down one time, and this butterfly should snap shut. So let's give her a try. Try and keep your eye on both of these. Just, you only got once to see it, but I guess you can rewind the video. So here we go. You see, that's one time to the floor, and let off. My choke has went flat. It's perfectly sealed. That's more important. And you seen the pump. Maybe you didn't, but it did make one little half squirt. Now, because I haven't started the truck in a while and the bowl's probably vaporized, but you can pump this. Your choke's not going to move again. But if you decide and your truck likes 2 pumps or 3 pumps, this isn't going to change. Your butterfly is already closed. You're just going to get more pumps through the accelerator pedal. See what I mean? So every morning you start this, kind of gauge how warm it is out, how cold it is out. It's all going to matter. But I don't drive my vehicle less than 40 degrees anyway. But if it's 50 or 60, maybe 1 pump will do it. When it's below 50 or below, you might give it 2 pumps. You need to figure out what your motor likes for those pumps. But here our butterfly is closed. All I want to say is, before I mention, I don't even think I can get it to relax. No, it's going to stay open because my choke's not going to hold it. But when this was open before, it wasn't perfect straight up and down like right there. It was slightly tipped. Not enough to really worry about. I could adjust it, but that's not as important as when you let go of it, it should be shut all the way around, creating a good vacuum for these front 2 barrels to suck gasoline in. So there's our basics. I'm going to wrap the video up with that, but I do want to just real quick touch on the choke adjustment in case you want to do that. The first adjustment you're going to make on this choke, there's 3 screws on most of them. They're in a triangular fashion. You don't have to remove them, just loosen them. And this black plastic piece will adjust. Now, I don't know how well you can see, but there's a bunch of notches on it. And there's a little white mark for a reference mark. Kind of gives you an idea where you're at. You can write it down and remember. I'm on, looks like, I don't have glasses on, 2 clicks or 2 notches is where I'm at. So if you want to make adjustments, keep track of what notch you're in and change the notches accordingly. The first starting adjustment you want to make is get into this position. If you've got an ice cold motor, stone cold here, and you did your pump one time and the butterfly is not closed, your first adjustment will be to loosen all these and turn this whatever direction you need, clockwise or counterclockwise, until that butterfly is completely closed. The idea is to adjust it just till it goes closed, not way farther. That's a good starting point. As time goes on, you might have to go tighter or looser. Again, several adjustments have to be made. There's the basics on a carburetor. I don't want to get too in depth. That's the back to the basics for this week. I did have somebody talking about carburetor, and they wanted some help with it. This is just a baseline starter point for a carburetor. We've got adjustment screws in the front. We got to have choke to adjust. We've got idle to adjust. There's a lot of things you can change your throttle position so that less pedal gives it more fuel. Gives you a little different feel on your throttle. If you don't like your throttle and it seems too touchy, there's adjustments for that. Or if you always feel like you're going 3/4, almost full throttle to make it do something, might be other issues. But it could also be your throttle is only opening halfway. Those things need to be looked at, and we can go through more in-depth and detailed carburation later on if you want. Again, I'm not a professional with them, but I know enough to make them work really good. Sure, not perfect, but I'm just shooting for really good on everything I do. There's your basics. There's your week. Thank you very much for coming. I'm going to get back on my course support. I'm going to try to paint the inside of the 68 door. When I get my paint mixed up, paint my bumper and all that. So we got plenty to go on next week. Thanks for coming. I got to go.